to be here once again, and there are some familiar faces, and also there are many new faces. And I would like to say, from my heart, it is very honor and very nice to be here with you, starting this evening and next 2 days I won't say teach. That is a little bit strong words for me. I will lead the group. Mainly focus on one of the most important topics that Buddha taught, and subsequently different Buddhist teachers have commented on that up to the present time. So that means almost more than 2,500 years, the continuation of this teaching. And I'm not sure how they have advertised. They may have put in a very, touchy statement. I'm not sure. Our main topic will be emptiness. So because of the nature of our gathering, and also in general, when we engage in activities, either routine activities, going to shopping, bringing up children, answering the emails, or some kind of important events or activities which are related to our inner world, our minds, thoughts, emotions, and not only related to our minds, thoughts, and emotions, but the events which also, in terms of it impacts not just for a few years or not even few decades from the Buddhist viewpoint, for many lifetimes, and also not just one's own well-being, but also the events that we are here is, something for many well-beings or for many living beings. So therefore, what is important here is, how much we are going to, how much we are able to understand the subject, starting from myself, who's facing towards you to explain the topic, and you to participate, to listen to my talks. And that is the different matter. What is important, what is useful, what is helpful is, to start with the right thought, right, traditionally called right motivation, engage in the activities like listening to the talk, contemplating, reflecting on the points, and the meditations, recitations, including tea breaks. During all these activities, if we engage with the right thought or right motivation, then those activities may turn up or may bring helpful, useful and meaningful results to ourselves as well as to others, and in terms of the time, immediately as well as for a long term. So I would like to emphasize on that, not just you, including myself, engage in these activities with the right positive and constructive motivation or thought or attitude. That will be very, very important, and that will be very, very useful. So when I say right thought, right motivation, here I'm not going to prescribe just the right motivation or the right thought that we all should try to hold. That's not the right way to do it. The right thought, right motivation, according to our own mental strength, our own mental, capability. What is important is that right thought to join the class should come from our heart, not because I have said, or not, something, the mimicking. We are very clever to mimic, and you know what I mean, mimic, copying from others. I'm not saying it's completely wrong. Sometimes copying is very useful, but in this kind of case, just copying from others is not necessarily that helpful. We all have ability. We all have ability, and we all are, capable to hold positive and constructive thoughts. Those positive and constructive thoughts can be just, the very, very simple, straightforward, common sense, the thoughts, or that can be philosophically or religiously, the motivated thought. It is up to the individuals. I'm not going to, as I said, I'm not going to prescribe, say, have this one, and that's not the right. But we all are capable, and we all have ability to hold positive thoughts. And I usually suggest that holding the positive thought is not just only at the beginning of the event or the beginning of the activity, but also during the events. Every now and again, briefly to reconnect, briefly to connect to that positive motivation that we started the event. I'm not saying only this kind of gathering, as I suggested earlier, even just making a cup of tea, bringing up your children, answering the phone, whatever. What is important, what is helpful is we have to sort of train ourselves, or train may not be a nice word. We have to, we should habituate ourselves, have that kind of habit, to whenever we engage in activities, whether spiritual activities or worldly activities, try to engage with the right positive thoughts. For example, a very, very simple positive thought, there's not necessarily any religious, spiritual element. Simply, okay, I'm going to answer this phone, or I'm going to answer this email, or I'm going to join this discussion, to see, how can I enhance my, those positive, constructive thoughts, emotions, and through that behavior. For that purpose, although I need to answer this email, but I'll answer this email with that thought. And also when you listen, participating, I'm going to participate in this evening gathering to listen, to contemplate, to, if there are questions, ask questions, really to enhance, to promote, to further develop those, like the love, compassion, altruism, wisdom, that deeper understanding, to enhance them, to further develop them, to benefit to myself, and also may indirectly benefit to the others who are, my family members, my colleagues, my friends, or something completely strangers. For that purpose, I'm here to join this gathering. Some kind of that kind of very, very simple, which we all are able to. To hold that kind of thought, we don't need any deep philosophical explanation, or we don't need any profound spiritual path. Just we all can, or we all are able to hold that sort of thought. So that's one of the suggestions. But then of course people who have a spiritual path, whatever, Christianity, Judaism, Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism, whatever, then motivate yourself according to that spiritual path. Hold according to that spiritual path. Whatever the positive, constructive thoughts help you to hold that as your starting point. Like for example, people who are following the teachings of the Buddha, some of those very helpful minds, like a mind taking refuge in Buddha, Dharma, and the Sangha, thinking the Buddha as my teacher, Dharma, his teachings is something that I should apply in my daily lives, something I should try to actualize, try to experience, and his Sangha as my spiritual friends, supporters, helpers, holding that mind at the beginning of the class. And for that, I'm here to join the class. Or some of you may follow within the teachings of the Buddha, like the Bodhisattva and the teachings which emphasize on emphasize on cultivation of altruistic awakened mind, bodhicitta, the mind which strongly concerns or cares well-beings of many, many living beings. So holding that kind of mind. So the varieties of positive and constructive thoughts that we can start with, and every now and then to remind ourselves, for that purpose I'm here to join the class. So that is the starting point, and that is the very important part of our gathering. As I said, in terms of the topic, emptiness, it is not that straightforward topic. So I don't know how much that we are able to really to discuss and read the text and need to talk on the subject. But if we engage with that kind of positive thought, then at the end of the say this evening, or people who are going to come the next 2 days, at the end of the weekends, although it will be ideal to sit outside in a beautiful day. I heard you don't, in so far you didn't have that much good weather, so sacrifice instead of lying down in the sunny, nice weather, coming here a little bit hot, sweaty, and but still try to hold your body together. But if we engage with this right positive thought at the end of the event, at least there won't be any regret. I hope. Okay. Oh yeah. So that is the my sort of strong encouragement how to join this gathering. Okay. So how long it is? Hour and a half or 2 hours?
It's 2 hours altogether.
Do we have it?
20, 30, and we have a small break.
Tea break.
Minutes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, we have it. Okay. Tea break. That's good. Okay. Yeah. Now then, after after the short tea break, when we come together, then we will do a short meditation. So now what I'll do, I will start to talk on the subject. Okay. Now this weekend the topic is on emptiness. That's how translated in English. There are different terms, not just saying avoidness. There are several different translations, but commonly used term in English is emptiness. And in Sanskrit, shunyata, that is the Sanskrit term, and in Tibetan, dongbani. Now this term shunyata in Sanskrit, and the widely used in English emptiness, it is mainly come from in terms of the origins of the Buddhist text, mainly in the Bodhisattva teachings. If there are people who are relatively new, the Buddhist teachings, the Buddhist teachings are divided into, say, the two categories, the Theravada teachings and the Bodhisattva teachings. If you want to edit the Vajrayana teachings separate from the Bodhisattva teachings, then 3, but I usually not to separate these two, keep it as a Bodhisattva teachings. So the teachings that attribute to the Buddha, the historical Buddha, Gautama, is divided into these, roughly divided into these two groups, Theravada teachings and the Bodhisattva teachings. So this term emptiness, shunyata, is mainly comes from the Bodhisattva teachings. Not that much. There are a few the references in the Theravada sutras, but mainly in the Bodhisattva sutras. Now, there's one similar to that term emptiness. There's another term is used very often, that is in English selflessness. Selflessness, and in Sanskrit it is called anatma. Anatma, and in English, Sanskrit, in English, selflessness. At a certain stage or certain traditions, certain teachers treat these two, the selflessness or anatma in Sanskrit and emptiness, shunyata, as a the same meaning and different terms, different terms. But other teachers, put into different categories. Selflessness and emptiness, they may have some connection, but these two are not like synonymous. These two are not like a same meaning. They have a slightly different meaning. So that is how. Now this selflessness, anatma, that topic is common to both traditions. Both traditions, Theravadan traditions as well as the Bodhisattva traditions, or commonly used Mahayana traditions. Or I tend to stick with the Bodhisattva traditions. So that this term, first just look at the two terms, selflessness and emptiness. Emptiness is commonly used in the Bodhisattva teachings, not very much in the Theravadan teachings. Selflessness is that term is used in the both traditions. And some Buddhist teachers, selflessness and emptiness are two different terms, but the same meaning. But some Buddhist teachers say no, they mean the same sort of meaning. One may have a more deeper than the other. This will come tomorrow, day after tomorrow. But just first look at the topic itself, emptiness. Yeah? Now, then how what's the way? What's the way to what's the way to approach this topic? Now I'm going to use emptiness. What's the way? How to approach to this topic, emptiness, and that is really important. And first, we need to look at that one, and over the next 2 days, I'm going to come back that again and again and again. Now, the way to approach to the topic, emptiness, is in 3 stages. In 3 stages, and that is the Buddhist way. That is the standard Buddhist way to approach some of these important topics. Not just the emptiness, impermanence, nature of dukkha, those important topics that need to be understood, that need to be realized, that need to be, understood. So the way to approach is have a very standardized, the approach, and I think that is very, very useful for us, not just you, me, also to bear in our mind. If we understand that this is the Buddhist way to approach these important topics, then in the future, when we say, okay, this is what Buddha taught, any kind of topics, that when you read a sutra or when you read the authentic Buddhist teaching, okay, this is the topic from this text. Now, I would like to really, to understand this. So what is the approach? And the Buddhist approach is this. There are 3 steps. The first step is called listening. It is very much from other people's the explanation on that topic. Our job at the first step is simply to read, to listen, what other people have said on this topic. So our topic is on emptiness. How Buddha said, how Buddha taught on this subject. Subsequently, other Buddhist teachers, like Nagarjuna, great Indian masters, how they taught this topic. And our task is read, listen, read, listen, read, listen. And that is really something very, very important. If we do not have enough information on the topic, our next 2 steps won't be that much productive, won't be that much resourceful. So the first step is really gathering enough information, not just from one teacher, not just from one book, not just from one tradition, from different traditions, from different teachers, contemporary teachers, past great teachers, so on and so forth. Make ourselves rich with information on this topic. In this case, emptiness. And that's called hearing or listening. Sometimes translated hearing, sometimes translated listening. In this case, saying. In Tibetan, turpa. Turpa. Turpa literally just you hear. You just hear. And because traditionally there aren't these kind of the books are readily available. The books are coming to just not more than 300, 400, 500, 600 years ago. So only thing is from the other people's speaking, and that's why the term is used, listening or hearing. From that, from listening, from hearing on this topic, on emptiness, from different teachers, as I said, contemporary, past, many other different, then we will gain some understanding on the topic. We'll gain some understanding on the topic. That is, how our mind works. Our mind works, more we hear on the topic, our mind slowly digests. I usually call our mind have a great ability to chew. Like those, when I was small, before I went to monastery. I went to monastery when I was 13, and before that I spent, my life with my parents. And my parents had some cows and some goats, and those animals. When I was small, and even still, these days, it's fascinating, isn't it? These animals during the day they eat lots of grass, and during the night they bring back, regurgitate. That's called in English, isn't it? Bring back and then chew again, then send back to again. So that is really here. What we have heard, what we have slowly, somehow our mind, sort of digest, chew what we have heard. By chewing, by digesting, then we will form some kind of, that is what emptiness means. That is the main purpose of studying emptiness. And so forth. We'll start to form some sort of, the understanding. And in the Buddhist, the Buddhist teachings, traditions, this is also counted as a wisdom. From the hearing that we have gained some form of understanding. It is called Geshe-La, wisdom through listening. wisdom through listening. And that is considered as very important. I want to read you one short passage from one of the great Tibetan teachers. In fact, the text that I'm going to use, during this weekend subject, the topic. It is a nice prayer. Prayer itself is called a prayer for the beginning, middle, and end of practice by Tsongkhapa, 14th century great Tibetan teacher. And this short prayer, there's there are a few verses which I'm going to talk to you over the next 2 days. So the first, it is not the first verse from the prayer. It is middle of the verse, but I'll read in the first verse. It says this: as much as I excel in learning, as much as I give to others, as pure as my morality grows, as much as I become wise, by as much may I be empty of pride. In other words, what he's talking about is, through listening, the understanding that I have gained, through the keeping the ethics, the morality that I have experienced, I will hold all this knowledge, all these great qualities without any negative pride, without any arrogance. So here, that mainly my main point is, talking about the listening, learning. He says, as much as I excel in learning. In this case, the previous verse is learning in the sense of through listening, and there's the next verse which is directly related with that. I pray that I listened, in Tibetan, I listened without any sense of, listen to the teaching or read the teachings without any sense of saying, that's enough, I had enough. Not in that kind of, things. Sense, sort of, you have a strong sense of yearning, listening or reading, sort of, again and again, and many different teachings, as he says here, to countless teachings at the feet of a master, single-handedly with the logic unflowered, prizing upon scripture meaning. Anyway, so the point here is this: listening to make one ourselves very rich, not to satisfy just listening one or two teachings, not to satisfy reading one or two texts, not in that fashion. Really make ourselves very, very rich through listening, reading from other masters' teachings. And that is here, which Tsongkhapa is. I will read some remaining verses tomorrow, which is, anyway, I found it very, very inspiring to do that. So that's the first step. Through listening, then we ourselves gain some form of understanding. Now the next step, after that, after we gain that understanding from other people's, the teachings or talks or books on the subject, and the understanding that we have gained, realization that we have gained from others, the second step is called contemplation. It's called contemplation. Now, here is our own contemplation. Not other people's contemplation, our own contemplation. Here, contemplation in the sense of a reflection, thinking, critical analysis, all these are the same thing. So the point that we have heard, points in this case, that the explanation that we have heard the purpose of learning emptiness, benefit of realizing emptiness, what is emptiness, and so on and so forth, that we have heard saying, this is the reason, teachers have said, this is the reason why understanding of emptiness is important. This is the reason, this is the benefit why, if you have the realization of emptiness, so on and so forth. Or said, this is the emptiness. So when we have this gained understanding from others, now the next task is then use our own mental state to contemplate, to think, to do if we use the modern Western term, critical analysis. Not leave it, not believe in, not just accept what they have said. The Buddha have said, understanding of emptiness is so important, blah, 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 blah. Nagarjuna have said, blah, blah, or the modern contemporary teacher have said. Not, accepting, this face value or believing what they have said, but taking further step now, using our own mind to analyze how, what. That is really, really important. If we don't take this step, the second step, just if we stay, many of us do, many of us stay in the first step. Our people who have been to Dharma, like myself, although my serious, the interest in Dharma wasn't right at the beginning. Right at the beginning, I was put in monastery, half my choice, half my parents' choice, half culture, and all those things. And I want to get out from the monastery as soon as I can, But then later, slowly, they built. But still, many of us, our Dharma, what we call understanding, what we call Dharma realization, is very much at the first level. Just from the other peoples have said. What is Buddha, what is Dharma, what is Sangha, what is emptiness, what is impermanence, so and so on, so on, so on. Not from our own understanding. If we don't break that barrier, if we don't take that step from the listening understanding of the Dharma to the Dharma understanding of Dharma through our own contemplation, then the proper realization will not be experienced. Proper realization will not be experienced. We will have faith, we'll have devotion, we may have inspiration, we may have this, the emotional gathering, doing, reciting, and believing, so on and so forth, but not the actual proper realization. to turn into realization, the second step, contemplation, critical analysis by our own mind on the subject is crucial. Is crucial. That's the second step. So we'll come back again, these three steps. Then the third step. Third step is technically called meditation. Meditation. Here, meditation, this term has many different connotations, many different meanings. Here, the meditation in this context, in the three stages of the how to approach the teachings, the third stage, which is called meditation. Here, the meditation in the sense of from our contemplation, from our critical analysis, what we have found, from our own critical analysis, examination, whatever term that you use, contemplation, what we have found, then living ourselves with that, familiarizing with that, our mind familiarized with that, what we have found on this, in this case, emptiness. Through contemplation, to understand emptiness. When we have understood emptiness, then that, soaking in the sense of bringing that realization, understanding that we gain through contemplation, bringing that understanding again and again within ourselves. That is meditation, familiarization. Familiarize ourselves with that. And it is the same on compassion, love, altruism, exactly the same process. Bringing that again and again and again, eventually those, in this case, mind which, the mind which realizes emptiness, become part of our mind. In other words, it's become like a innate, very natural. And that is the power of meditation. When that mind becomes very natural, very innate, very sort of spontaneous, then we will see the benefits. They really will see the benefits. So that is the approach. How to approach, in this case, on emptiness, with these three stages: listening, contemplation, and meditation. So this weekend, our main, out of these three stages, our main, the tool or the thing is the first one. I will say on the topic, you listen. Also, you can contemplate while I'm saying, but that contemplation will be very shallow for the time being. To have a powerful contemplation, needed some good time to point out. So therefore, this is the procedure which I'm going to touch on coming, tomorrow and day after tomorrow. Now, that's the second point. The first point is the motivation. Second point is this now, the approach, how to approach. And this is standard Buddhist approach. In the West, I remember a few years ago, maybe 7-8 years ago, the British government was very, very keen to adopt, Swedish education system, and so the in other words Swedish way of teaching to the young to children. So we all have some sort of structure, isn't it? As a sort of to develop new understanding, and that is what I'm talking about. This is the Buddhist approach or structure, how to build understanding, the knowledge, the wisdom, and a very useful to bear in mind. As I said, if you understand this is the way how the Buddhist masters have, mastered on these topics, then whether we do exactly the same as they have done or not, but at least we have some kind of structure. As my, the Buddhist study is concerned, this is the structure. Listening, but not satisfied. What I've understood just from the listening, what I've understood from my listening, reading, the next step is to do my own homework, to contemplate. Through the contemplation, what I have gained, understanding or the realization, then put into practice meditation. That is the tradition, what's called a standard Buddhist approach. Okay. Now I'm going to move to talk on the actual topic, emptiness. Now, because I want to make very clear, that my leading this weekend class is, I'm going to follow one particular master, his teaching. I'm not saying that's the only way. I'm not saying that's the best. Not for that, because simply I'm going to talk on subject on emptiness, rely on Tsongkhapa's text, that 14th century great Tibetan masters, because I'm not saying I'm really very good at his teachings, not really good at his teachings, but I have studied many years on this subject from his text, but also from other texts. But his texts are one of the main texts that I was taught by those great teachers, my teachers, and I myself have read many times. And this is not my first Tibetan text. If you haven't seen my the second, I have 3 texts, exactly the same text. If you look at if you have seen my first text, it's completely hardly left any empty, and on top and notes and particularly the emptiness section, the page I turn again and again, back and forth, and then not very clean fingers and all of black and everything. So this is my third text. Anyway, this is now also filling slowly notes. So because of my familiarization with the text and with these great teachers, the style of explaining on this subject, so I will follow Tsongkhapa's text. But as I said, that doesn't mean this is the best. That doesn't mean this is the only. There are many different teachers have written many great texts from all the different traditions. Okay, I want to make that very clear right at the beginning. Now, first, as I briefly mentioned earlier, this topic, emptiness, is mainly taught in the Bodhisattva teachings. Now, Bodhisattva and the teachings. Bodhisattva and the teachings are a little bit difficult to understand how historical Buddha taught. The historical Buddha Gautama taught some of those Bodhisattva and the sutras, like Panchaparamita Sutras, Perfection of Wisdom Sutras. Many of the Theravadan Sutras, like Four Noble Truths, 37 Aspects of the Path to Enlightenment, Four Foundation of Mindfulness, many of the Theravadan Sutras are not that difficult, although they are written down after few hundred years Buddha passed away, but still there's a common acceptance, yes, taught by the historical Buddha. But the Bodhisattva and the teachings are not that easy to say, particularly if we use the modern historian, those academic, the world or the field. They're very difficult to say taught by the historical Buddha, because if you listen, if these Bodhisattva and the sutras like Panchaparamita Sutras, Perfection of Wisdom Sutras, are taught by the historical Buddha, taught to whom? Who are the listeners? Who are there at that time? Then in those sutras, main listener were not human beings. Not human beings. They are the main listener are those bodhisattvas, Manjushri, the Avalokiteshvara, Samatapatra. Those 8 main, the bodhisattvas. Those are the main maitreya. Those were the main, the listeners. If you look at the sutra, it clearly mentioned, taught to Manjushri, taught to Avalokiteshvara, taught to Samatapatra, and so forth. But these are not like John, Dave, not like that, not human beings. So they have a little bit, the things to need to look at in that way. And I will not go in that, to talk on that something on that issue, but just let you know. Now, our main concern is the topic itself, emptiness. So that within the Bodhisattvayana teachings, now, if you are relatively new, this might be quite useful in the future. So, in Buddhism, and now we're talking about the tradition which comes from India, not started from Tibet, not started from Thailand or Burma. It started from India, isn't it? So in Indian language, there are many different languages. Seems there were many different languages at the Buddha's time. Commonly accepted Buddha taught in a local dialect, although we don't know what is that local dialect. But now the Buddha's main teachings are in 2 Indian languages. That's Pali and the Sanskrit. So in these 2 languages, they have a slightly different how to pronounce. Otherwise quite similar. So these 2 terms which we need to just, maybe useful in the future. This one term, first term is called sutra. Sutra. So when you come across in Buddhism, I'm not saying the Hinduism or Brahmanism, they also use this term sutra because that is the local language, But in Buddhism, when you come across saying a sutra, blah 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 blah, then it is referring to historical Buddha. At least that it is considered that is taught by the historical Buddha when you say sutra, Buddha Gautama. But when you say shastra, sutra and shastra, shastras are the commentaries written by Indian masters. So both are Indian. Buddha was Indian, and those other commentators were also Indian. But that is how in the Buddhist, the tradition, how they differentiate. Buddha's words are called sutras, and commentaries written by the subsequent Indian masters, they are called shastras. Okay. Now in the sutra, the words refer to the Buddha. Then in the Bodhisattva in the tradition, there are three groups. First group is called the first turning of the will of the Dharma, or first teaching. First turning of the will of the Dharma. Second turning of the will of the Dharma, and third turning of the will of the Dharma. In other words, what it's saying is Buddha taught these three different groups of teachings. The first, second, and third should not be understood in terms of the time. The sutras in the first group, they are taught first. Sutras in the second group, they are taught in the middle, and the sutras which in the third group, they are taught in the third. No. Put into these three groups according to their subject matters. I'm talking to you according to the Bodhisattva and the teachings, traditions. The Buddha's teachings are put into three groups. First, turning of the will of the Dharma. Second, turning of the will of the Dharma. And third, turning of the will of the Dharma. This is technical term. Will of the Dharma, as you know, the symbol of Buddhism. Symbol of Buddhism is this wheel, isn't it? Wheel which has 8 spokes. And that's why turning, that means the Buddha taught that teaching here, there, again, and again. That's what the meaning turning. Or another meaning of turning in the sense of Buddha taught, then later teachers have taught, then others taught, continue. And that's also meaning turning of the will of the Dharma. So in other words, these are the three groups. Why I'm coming here? Because I want you to know exactly, where this subject is taught, from the Buddhas. And that's why I'm going these technical things. I'm not obsessed. Some people I've heard of, because now I lived in West more than 25 years, and they lived a long time in the West, over those years, sometimes people say, "Oh, Tibetans are very obsessed with the lists, and obsessed with the outlines, and so on and so forth." And to some extent it is true. But on the other hand, that's the way how to learn. Having lists, having outlines, help us to really bring together in these kind of, these are not that kind of something that, cookery, learning how to cook. Learning how to cook is not that, you don't need to memorize. lots of things, but these are something mental training. It is useful to have a list sometimes. Anyway, what I'm saying here. Oh yeah. So out of these three groups of sutras, first, second, and third, our topic, emptiness, is in the second, turning of the will of the Dharma, and it is called in their group of sutras. It is not just one, there's a group of sutras in this second turning of the will of the Dharma, and that group of sutra is called Panchaparamita Sutra. In Sanskrit, Panchaparamita Sutras, and in Tibet, in English, sometimes they translate it saying perfection of wisdom sutras, perfection of wisdom sutras, or there's another term in Tibetan saying Yavayung, that means the mother of the conquerors, in other words, mother of the wisdom, mother of the Buddha. Conquerors here refers to the Buddha, not necessarily historical Buddha. In the future, you and me may become Buddha. So, mother, this group of sutra in the second turning of the will of the Dharma, in their own title is called Panchaparamita Sutra, Perfection of Wisdom Sutra, and Perfection of Wisdom. Perfection of wisdom. Subject matter in these group of sutra help us to have this wisdom, and that's what the term perfection of wisdom sutra, perfection, or perfection here in the sense of this group of sutras in the second turning of the will of the Dharma, the main topic, now I'm going to repeat that earlier what I've said, if we listen, contemplate, and meditate, on the subject matter of this group of sutra, Perfection of Wisdom Sutra, that will lead us through this process. That will lead us to perfection. That means to enlightenment or awaken. That will make us to awake. And that's the meaning of perfection. Perfection of Wisdom Sutra. Perfection in the sense of its main subject matter, which is emptiness, which I haven't said anything what is emptiness yet, but just say this, which is emptiness. Now, if individuals, you and me, engage with this subject through listening, contemplation, and meditation, what will be the end result? And the result will be the individuals become perfection. I'm sure some of you don't like that word. I don't want to be perfect. But here the perfection is not talking about external. It is talking about internal. I have few friends. They dislike these words, perfection. That's kind of obsessed with become perfect, everything perfect. This should be put in here, this should be put in here, and this shouldn't move. Or like some of those, what you call the big banquet, like sometimes English queen, give to banquet, and then they have to measure where to put the knife, where to put the wine glass, where to put the water glass, and where to put all the dessert plates, and they have to measure. Perfection, isn't it? So here we are not talking about that kind of perfection. What we are talking about is perfection in the sense of our mind. Our mind be free from confusion, and afflictions, and that is here the perfection. So here, perfection of Wisdom Sutra is talking about the subject matter, which is the emptiness. If we engage with this subject matter, with the emptiness, through these three stages, listening, contemplation, and meditation, that will make our minds be free from confusion, affliction, delusion, whatever term that you use. The Buddhist term is called affliction or ignorance. And that's what here the term Panchaparamita in Sanskrit, in English, perfection. There's another term, as I mentioned earlier, in Tibetan, day1. This is very nice word. Jawa refers to Buddha. Not historical Buddha, just any Buddha, any fully awakened. Yum means mother. What it's talking about is, the subject matter of this sutra, Perfection of Wisdom Sutra. If somebody or if individuals like you and me engage in this subject matter with these three stages, we will be born. We will be born into Buddha. We will be born into a fully awakened person. And that's what called mother. Because mothers give birth for the new child. Similar to that, the wisdom, the realization of emptiness will leads us to a fully awakened being, like giving a new birth. And that's what the term, Gyave-yung. I think that might be enough now. Now, that is the sutra, the Buddhist word. So in here, some of you may have heard. Have you heard Heart Sutra? I'm sure many of you have heard. Very, very famous, very short, just less than 25 verses. Although it's not in verse fashion, it is loose sentence. But if you counted the syllables, it has 25 verses. Just 25 verses, short one. But very, very, it is one of the Panchaparamita Sutras. Or I'm sure some of you have heard, Dhammin Sutra, Vajracitta, Dhammin Sutra. Very, very famous sutra, Vajra Sutra. And one of the earliest, the printed sort of texts, Vajra texts. One very earlier copy is in British Library. I don't know how they got it, then they have stolen it. No, I'm joking. But the British Library, they have a very, very old Dhammin Sutra. And a few years ago they displayed, to people go and look at. So that is one of them. So in that Panchaparamita Sutras, there are not just one text. Some, for example, the most extensive one in the Tibetan version, most extensive Panchaparamita Sutra has 100,000 verses. 100,000 verses. That's the most extensive one. And the middle one has 25,000 verses, and the shortest one has 8,000 verses. Those are the three which we count. But then between that there are many small verses, the small shorter ones, like Heart Sutra, like Dhammin Sutra. Dhammin Sutra is a little bit longer than Heart Sutra. So there are many different. All these are attributed to the historical Buddha, and it is in this second term of the Will of the Dharma. That's the sutra. Now, are you ready, or you may take a little bit rest? What is the term?
About 10 minutes should be.
Shall we have 10 minutes break? Yeah? Okay. Yeah, you should ring something. Yeah, so we'll have 10 minutes break. Quality, calmness, as well as have focus. That's the purpose of this meditation to experience that kind of mind. We'll experience this kind of mind when we cultivate, when we develop these two mental qualities. Mental qualities are stillness and clarity. Stillness and clarity. These two qualities, when we cultivate, when we develop these two qualities, stillness and clarity, then we will have a calm, clear and focused mind, which will be extremely helpful in our everyday lives. In our everyday lives, if we are able to experience this kind of mental qualities, we'll have, even though our, the real world, our external world may have lots of challenges, may have lots of difficulties, but internally, at least there is a sense of calm and relaxation. And if people who have a spiritual path to follow, any kind of spiritual path, Judaism, Christianity, any kind of spiritual path, Buddhism, if we have this kind of mind which has these two qualities, stillness. Stillness here referring to our mind stays with one given object or one given event. Just stays with that. That is the meaning of stillness. Stillness, or sometimes I use stability. That we train our mind to stay with the one given object. During the meditation, that object can be our breathing, it can be image of Buddha, it can be any other things. But train our mind to stay with the one given object. That is the meaning of stillness. And our mind can learn. At the moment, we may find it difficult, our mind to stay with the one given object or one given event, even a few seconds, very difficult. But if we train our mind will learn. And that is the first quality to develop stillness. And the second quality to develop is clarity. Clarity. Here the meaning of clarity is again very, very simple. Simple. While our mind stays with one given object, like breathing, or just sensation at the nostril, or the movement of our abdomen raising and falling while we are breathing, or just an image, whatever, it is up to the individual. It is up to the individual what to choose. Now, during the training, choose one particular object, like breathing or image of Buddha, or particular mental event, like strong sense of love or compassion, then mind stays with that. And that is the meaning of stillness. When the mind stays with that, then the next quality is clarity. Clarity here, the meaning is, while the mind is with the object of the meditation, the mind is 100% with that object. Not half, not 70%, not in that. Full attention. The full attention is with that object of the meditation. If it's breathing, our full attention is with the breathing. But not interpreting, saying, oh, my breathing is short, long, shallow, or not giving any kind of that kind of descriptions. Anything, avoid all this chattering. Simply attention. Full, and that's the meaning of clarity. So these two, staying with the object and the full attention, stillness and the clarity. When you have these two, then we'll have a calm, clear, and focused, which will be extremely helpful in our everyday lives as well as in the spiritual journey. If our mind, general mind, is in that kind of shape, have that kind of quality or ability to stay with one given object and with the full attention. Okay? That's the purpose. Now, because it can be done with the sitting, it can be done with the walking, it can be done with the standing. So today our style is sitting meditation. So then it is useful to get a sitting posture, body posture. It will take a little bit of time if you are relatively new to have a comfortable, the right sitting posture. This combination of there's a structure, such as unless if your back has a problem, otherwise your back is straight. Your sort of hands are in a particular gesture and so forth. Yet it is completely relaxed. This combination is not easy. There's a structure, yet it is completely relaxed. And that kind of body posture, we can learn. Our body can learn. Body can learn, have a comfortable, yet there's a structure. So that's the first step. Spend 1 or 2 minutes. Today I will not describe all the structure because they're not really coming straight away from your work and listen blah 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 blah. So I will not say all the structure. Tomorrow I will talk a little bit on that. But just find yourself. Try yourself to get a, particularly people who are relatively new, try and get a comfortable sitting posture. Wherever you sit. Then after that, when you find a comfortable right sitting posture, then really choose an object. Choose an object. Just you can choose your breathing or sensation at your nostrils or image of Buddha, whatever. Again, spend 1 or 2 minutes with that, choosing an object of meditation. When these two are the preparation. When these two preparations are done, then first simply place your mind on the object of the meditation that you have chosen. If it is breathing, place your mind on your breathing. That means your mind be with your breathing. That's the meaning of place. That is the meaning of stillness. That means your mind stays with your object of the meditation. And when there is this kind of stillness, that means your mind stays with the object of meditation, then raise the awareness or the attention. The full attention is with that object of meditation. Yet there's no interpretation, there's no description, there's no labeling, free from all those chattery, discursive thoughts. Simply be with your object of meditation and be fully aware of the object of meditation. And then when that kind of qualities are present, then stay with that. Remain, your mind just remain with that. So we are going to do this meditation just about 10 minutes, just about 10 minutes, this short silent meditation. these two. We start the first session with setting the right thought to join the class this evening. But in general, as I suggested, any kind of activity that we engage in, try to learn to engage that activity with the right thought. And this second session, we start with this short meditation to experience a calm, clear, and a focused mind. I believe, and I also suggest to others, these two should be, or we should engage in these two everyday level, with the morning when we woke up, to set the right thought. As soon as we woke up, set the right thought. In this particular day, I'm going to spend my day with this. Start with a positive thought. As I mentioned, it can be a simple, straightforward, common sense, positive thought, or if you have a religious path to follow, with that. Then find during the day, find a time, find a space for yourself to do, 10, 12 meditations, minutes of meditations. Don't need longer than 15 minutes. 10, 12, 15 minutes. It is very, very vital to give time to ourselves, to really find our inner sort of strength, mental state, to experience a calm, clear, focused mind. These two will be really, really crucial to our daily lives. Not to heavily influenced by the external, the busyness, demanding, the challenges, and so on and so forth. So now, whenever I lead classes, I will always start with these two, to say, set the right thought, do a short meditation. I know, just coming once a week or once a month, doing this will not make any difference. But my suggestion is, habituate ourselves doing that. Spending a few minutes to meditate, spend a few minutes to start the right thought. That will be very, very useful. So anyway, I will tomorrow I will lead a little bit on that meditation. Today, this evening we just we done that meditation. Tomorrow I will lead one session, really stage by stage, how to do this meditation. I'm sure some of you have been doing this for many years, have mastered with them. But some of you might be relatively new, so I will, just to benefit to those people, tomorrow, one session I will lead stage by stage how to form, that kind of meditation. It's very, very simple. It is just a matter of ourselves doing it. Meditation itself is not difficult, not complicated. There's no deep philosophy, there's no deep, something mysterious. No, it's really straightforward. It is just a matter of ourselves doing it. Giving time to ourselves to do the meditation. So tomorrow I will lead that. Okay. Now remaining 9 until 9. Now it's 8:30. I will continue my talk. Now just before that short tea break, I was talking about what are the sources in terms of the material in terms of the teaching material on this subject, emptiness, and I'll briefly touch on the sutras, the historical Buddhist teaching sutra, and that is the Art of the Three, Turning of the Will of the Dharma. Second, it is overall it is called Panchaparamita Sutra, and so on and so forth. Just briefly, I want to add one sentence. So this group of sutras called Panchaparamita Sutras, the commentators, later Indian commentators, there are two groups of commentators. One group of teachers, Indian teachers, they wrote commentaries, what they called explicit subject of the Panchaparamita Sutras. So their commentaries, like Nagarjuna and his close disciple Ayodhya, these two are around second century AD, Common Era, and Nagarjuna and Ayodhya. These and some other, these Indian masters, they wrote commentaries, for us to understand Panchaparamita Sutra, Buddhist teachings, in more precisely. But their commentaries are the explicit topics of the Panchaparamita Sutras, and that is emptiness. For example, Nagarjuna have written several important texts as you can say commentary, like a root of fundamental wisdom. There are several other texts by Nagarjuna. And the other group of Indian masters, like Asanga. The other group of Indian, Asanga was around 4th century AD, Common Era, the Asanga. Asanga and his younger brother, they were born modern time in Pakistan, Peshawar. And the Peshawar, in Pakistan, that area, they were born in that area. Not long ago, maybe 20, 30 years ago, even that village where they were born, we can go and visit. And the great Indian master. And Asanga and some of his, they wrote commentaries. This Panchaparamita group of sutra, Panchaparamita Sutra. Panchaparamita Sutras, implicit topics. So in other words, what the later Indian masters, when they study this group of sutras, Panchaparamita Sutras, they have found two meanings, two topics, explicit topics and implicit topics. Explicit topic is emptiness. So in other words, explicit topic is how to develop, how to cultivate wisdom, realizing emptiness. And implicit topic is how to cultivate great compassion and particularly altruistic awakened mind, bodhicitta. So these Indian masters, later commentators, when they wrote the commentaries on the same text, group of texts, Panchaparamita Sutra, they said, okay, this group of texts, the explicit topic is emptiness, and some of the great Indian masters wrote the top commentaries, and they said, these group of teachings also have implicit topics. And the implicit topic is great compassion and bodhicitta. And some great Indian masters focus on implicit. So what that tells us, according to these commentaries, this group of sutras have these two main topics. The first topic is wisdom, realizing emptiness, to be cultivated, to be developed. Implicit topic is to cultivate great compassion, altruism. So what he's saying is, if you want to follow that group of sutra, Panchaparamita Sutra, in other words, if you want to follow that, the Bodhisattva and the teachings and practices, you have to develop, you have to cultivate both wisdom and compassion. It is not good enough just cultivating wisdom. Also, it's not good enough just cultivating great compassion or altruism. Practitioners should be cultivated both. And this is very, very, I just want to make a short quotation from another great Indian master. He might be in 7th, 8th century, great Indian master, which tomorrow you will hear his name quite a lot, Chandakirti, I think 7th century, wrote several amazing texts on this subject. And one of his texts, it has 10 chapters, and at the end of the 10th chapter, there is a verse. And the verse is very nicely explained the importance of having both cultivation of wisdom and the cultivation of compassion. And he said, "Mambe gyabutini kyo mambai, dundo tana gyawe mundi shukdoki, gyawe yunde gyatsu paru chotudo." So, mambe gyabutini kyo mambai. So what he's saying is, these great birds, some of these big birds, crossing one continent to another continent, changing moving from the summer to the winter to the summer, and they cross great oceans and all lots of difficulties, and even some small birds also they do, don't they? They cross from one continent to another continent. I've been a few years ago. I have a friend who was greatly interested in these small, I don't know what they call it, small birds, which really, they come from Morocco, and they cross all the Europe, and eventually they end up some winter in England, the East England. They end up there. It's small birds. I can't remember the name. So what this verse is saying, what does that mean is those big birds, particularly the bird who leads the flock to cross from one continent to another continent. So to cross these great oceans, those great mountains, the birds need both wings be very, very healthy. It's not good enough, just one wing is very healthy. It's not good enough, has an amazing, back wind, when it's a back tail wind, to push them forward. It needs all these together. So if that bird, or if those birds, if they have the both wings healthy, then they won't have a great difficulty to cross the great ocean or great continents to reach their destination. Similar to that, the practitioners who want to cross the ocean of samsara, ocean of difficulties, not just their own, but also others. In this case, we are talking about bodhisattva, so not just his or her own ocean of samsara, but also the ocean of samsara, ocean of difficulties of others. If they want to cross that ocean for their own sake or for the sake of others, they have the both wings. That is the wisdom and the emptiness. If they have the bold wisdom, realizing emptiness, and the great compassion, they have no problem to cross that great ocean of samsara. And that's this verse, this Chandrakirti, 7th century great Indian master. So this, what we are talking about here, is these great Indian masters looking at this group of sutras attributed to the historical Buddha, then they will say, oh, this group of sutras, they have this explicit meaning and implicit meaning, and these are both are extremely important to the followers to have. However, our subject is the explicit emptiness. This weekend our subject is emptiness. Now, as I started this evening, this subject and the same group of sutra, Panchaparamita Sutra, and in India as well as in Tibet, because this group of sutra is studied only in India, this group of teachers, and then in Tibet, and not in Thai tradition, Thai Buddhist tradition, Burmese tradition, Sri Lankan tradition, because that is the Bodhisattva teachings, not the Theravadan teachings. It is, I'm not saying one is better than others, simply to give to that what is. So this group of sutras, while these are studied by the great Indian masters, in some cases studied, followed by, not just the same sutra, but followed by the same group of teachers, but then have found different understanding, different interpretation, and so on and so forth. Okay? What I'm doing here is I'm narrowing down, slowly narrowing down our, eventually saying, this is the text that I'm going to use. But before we reach there, I want to build the structure. That's what I'm doing. So I've finished the sutra, now I'm coming to the Shastra, that is the Indian commentaries. Why I'm doing this, maybe you may think, oh, it's very boring, I don't understand, who are those people? I have no idea, because I know, when I was reading some of those, the great books on some of those great, the Greek philosophers, or, I have no idea who they are, and, but it is useful if you, at least if you get a glimpse of understanding, then we know that where we are, what we are studying, and that's where it's come from. Okay. Now that's sutra. Now Shastra, commentaries. Among the great commentators, Indian master, among the great commentators, two masters, which I already named earlier, two masters, outstanding two masters, among the commentator of the explicit meaning, explicit topic. Two masters are Nagarjuna and Anyadev. Both are around, not very clear, sort of, around end of the 1st century Common Era or beginning of the 2nd century Common Era. So, around that time. So that means just, 100 years around, the Jesus, the passed away, died. So around that time. Great. This Nagarjuna, the first one, he was born and spent most of his time, although he seems that he traveled a little bit in central India, but his time in South India. The modern time is Tamil Nadu, this place called, I'm sure some of you have heard, during the English colonial, the city is called Madras. Now they changed the name, Chennai. not very far from there, there is a place called Nagarjuna Konda and Nagarjuna Sagar. Just about 8 hours driving. I mean, I'm talking about Indian cars, Indian roads, okay? 8 hours. So I said just 8 hours, but it is in the context of Indian.
20 kilometers.
Yes, a little bit longer than that. Yeah, so there's a very nice, I remember very, very clearly, 1970, 73 or 74, me and a group of us monks, I mean, I was not grey at that time, relatively young, with some of my teachers, because these monks moved from east to the south, Tibetan monks, and South India, where they are now established, is not very far from Chennai. So they know this, this great master, Indian master came from. And we went to pilgrimage in these two places. One is called Nagarjuna Sagar, one is called Nagarjuna Konda. Nagarjuna Konda is the place where Nagarjuna was born. Nagarjuna Sagar is the place where he spent many, many years studying meditation. And when we went there in 1973 or 4, I can't remember the exact name, just, Indian central government with the state government, combination of two together, they're starting to build this big, big, big dam, water dam. And still we can walk at that time, from the Nagarjuna Konda to Nagarjuna Sagar. Nagarjuna Sagar is in a beautiful place. It's shame they put this dam. Big mountain, and another mountain coming here, several waters coming down, and somewhere in that valley there's another relatively big mountain, just standing there. And what they did, they put a big dam, so entire valley was flooded. So when we went in 1970, still water was slowly collecting, but we can walk. 2 days walking from the Konda to the Sagar, put all our luggage on the cart, pulled by the cows, and then we walk. But nowadays you can just go by these big tourists, what you call the ship, just less than 20-30 minutes, and just the top of the hill, still you can go and see all those things. Rest of all under the water. It's really a shame they did that. Anyway, I have nothing to do with that now. So that's the place this great Indian master was born. Very, very important. And his direct disciple called Ayadev. So these two are sometimes they are called fathers. The fathers of commentaries on emptiness. The writers, later writers, many Indian writers, they treat these two, Nagarjuna and Ayadev, are the sort of father. And that's what I'm saying. Although later Indian masters, they all say, yes, these two are the great with the authoritative, or we can trust, we can agree. But when these later masters start to write commentaries, then they have a different views. Now, first I want to give you the name of the school that we are going to study, Emptiness, founded by these two great Indian masters, called in Sanskrit called Madhyamika. And it is translated in English middle way. In Sanskrit it is called Madhyamika, and in English